was a disappointing press conference, any way you look at it. Here's a little taste of what President Trump said today.
I think that the probe is a disaster for our country. I think it's kept us apart. It's kept us separated. There was no collusion at all. Everybody knows it. But the main thing, and we discussed this also, is zero collusion. And it has had a negative impact upon the relationship of the two largest nuclear powers in the world. We have 90% of nuclear power between the two countries. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous what's going on with the probe.
There's the president in front of the world blaming the Mueller probe and not Russia for where we're at right now. Let's discuss this further. Really happy to be joined by Colonel Rob Maness. Colonel Maness, thank you so much, my friend. Let's just cut right to it. What did you think of this press conference today?
Well, thanks for having me on, Joe. But the first issue that I have, especially with everybody that's just screaming from the top of their lungs about what President Trump just said, the clip you just played there, is the constant conflation between Russian meddling in the elections and this collusion issue, and the man can't get away from it. And it was a crappy series of answers. Now, that particular one, I think he was right, but he didn't talk about the meddling there. He's talking about the darn collusion stuff that the media in this country and the left has played on that, continues to conflate. Until today, of course. Now the media is all about, hey, you should be America first, and this is Russian meddling. This isn't about collusion. So, you know, I am not a fan of Donald Trump. It's pretty well documented in my media history over the last few years. But I do support him, and I support his policies. The only one that I'm really nervous about really is the tariff policy right now. But that's where I'm at on the whole series of questions.
Yeah, so Colonel Maness, that's a great point. I want to stop you there. Let's drill down there. Why, in your estimation, because this to me was a real betrayal, and maybe talk me off of this ledge. He was asked a question today, a direct question, who do you believe when it comes to meddling? And the question was only meddling. Do you believe your own people or Putin? And I thought his answer, Colonel Maness, was such a betrayal because he kind of sort of said he believes Putin.
Well, he didn't say that directly. I understand where he's coming from. Let me talk you off of the ledge, Joe, because I think you're a reasonable man. I think we're 99.9% in agreement on most issues, from what I can tell. I'm a fan of yours. So, but look, when you have Comey, Strzok, McCabe, all of these issues arising in the leadership of our domestic intelligence organization. Keep in mind that Strzok was the head of counterespionage in our intelligence organization domestically. So he's responsible for all these areas. And you have these issues arising. We can't get any straight answers out of them. You have McCabe being fired and recommended to be fired by the IG, Comey being fired by the president himself, which results in this special counsel that's constantly being conflated with between meddling and collusion of the Trump campaign. And that's what he's presented with. And then before him, inaugurated, the intelligence community issued the intelligence assessment, which is where I think you're coming from, that talked about and really laid out that the Russians were meddling in the election. Here's the problem I have with that intelligence assessment. And I was in the intelligence community for several years as an executive leader, and I've used operational intelligence for about 35, 36 years now of my life, since I was 17 years old. There was not one crumb of declassified evidence in that intelligence assessment. I wrote about it when they published it, and I suspected and still suspect that John Brennan politicized that intelligence assessment. They said the talking point is all 17 intelligence agencies agreed with this. Well, that's not true. When you drill down into that, the three most politically controlled intelligence agencies agreed. The fourth, the NSA, agreed in part and caveated its agreement. And all the rest of them did not agree with that intelligence assessment. So when you combine that assessment with what this president is seeing from his domestic intelligence community, the leaders now, not the guys and gals doing the grunt work down at the field level, but the leaders. Can you imagine? What would you be thinking if you were in that position? I'll tell you what I'd be thinking. I'd be telling them they need to apologize to the American people. They are the ones that need to apologize to the American people. And this president, in that clip you just showed, and throughout this it was crappy. I'm going to tell you, as a guy who staunchly supports policies but doesn't like the guy, he was obviously tired. He didn't present himself well, and he should have done a hell of a lot better job than that. And his team should have known, and he should have known that this was a critical press conference. But let me tell you, when you see from that perspective and you just look at the big picture, you got to go, holy crap. This guy has been presented with this day in and day out for 2 years. All the media, all of the leadership in the intelligence organizations that are political appointees just about have either been fired, removed, under investigation, and I'm not surprised that he said it. Now, here's the bad part. The bad part is that Devin Nunes, House Special Standing Committee on Intelligence, presented its report in March that was almost identical to the indictments. That's what gives me the confidence that Mueller's indictments are pretty darn close. What we don't know, though, and interestingly enough, Vladimir Putin brought this up, is in his interview with Chris Wallace afterwards, we don't know if those are Russian agents of the government or if they're just Russian people. Because in the hacking world and social media world and the digital world, you can have all kinds of mixtures of those. Would it surprise me if the Russian agents were behind it? No, not really, but they really weren't that good. It was a spearfishing operation. My 14-year-old son can figure out how to do that effectively, which says something really bad about the Democrat, John Podesta, that fell for it in the first place. But to get back to President Trump,
Colonel Maness, no, I was just going to ask you, was it a mistake for him to meet with Putin?
No, not at all. All of the last presidents that have, since Putin's been in office, have met with him. I mean, George W. Bush invited him to the ranch and had the family out there. Said I looked in the guy's eyes. Well, when I look in his eyes, I see a KGB colonel. And I've said that for years. You got to remember, the guy's a KGB colonel. And President Obama, just in 2016 in October, after he was presented with much of this evidence, said the same thing. He went and met with him, and he said, look, you can't tell really if they're meddling or not. What are you going to do? Poke him in the chest on the world stage? But what's really wrong with this situation, and the president, he'll take responsibility in his unique way, I'm sure, but is the intelligence leadership that has been politicized in this country. It's terrible. And the Department of Justice that has been politicized in this country, and that is a grave threat to our nation's security, along with the way the corporate media that has all the money has been acting. They're acting as if they're propaganda arms of the left.
Yeah, I got to hop, my friend. Thank you so much, Colonel Maness. I want to get you on again. I really do appreciate it. Thank you. Hey, fake news. Anti-Israeli bias. I'll have it for you next.